the bigger reason why early stage companies fail is because the people who started the company were actually not the right people to start that company. It's more of a personality thing when it comes to founders. There is a very, very specific skill set that you need in founders for them to be successful. And I'm saying this after seeing thousands and thousands of companies and founders, right? The common ground that you need for anything to work in a startup ecosystem is the person has to be absolutely relentless when it comes to execution.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Unlocking the AI Advantage podcast. And this is your host, Ramesh Zanta. And today I'm going to walk you through the journey of a startup, but not from the startup side, but the ecosystem side, where lots of other players in the startup ecosystem, stakeholders, they're helping other startups get funding. So last episode, we talked about a venture capitalist, an angel investor group, how they are helping startups. And today, I'm going to introduce a gentleman who actually helps the startups, in a non-diluted funding side, so which I'm sure you'll be very, very interested to learn. So let me introduce, without much delay, Rupak Doshi. He is the founder of OmniSync. So we'll know more about OmniSync, what it does, and then we will also know more about Rupak Doshi, who's got a fantastic, the journey that he would share with us. Rupak, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. Awesome being here.
Excellent. So I know I did a little bit of introduction, but I will never do justice to the introduction that they themselves will do. So please, Rupak, go ahead and introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so my name is Rupak Doshi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called OmniSync. We're based in San Diego in the US. And in terms of personally, myself, I am a trained biotech scientist by profession. And somehow my journey has, over the years, led me to becoming an entrepreneur for a company that primarily uses software to actually help companies, get further along in their commercialization pathways. And so I'm very interested to talk to you guys about everything we do in the company, and looking forward to helping a lot of you all really understand some of the things that are not that intuitive for most people in the community to know. And that's kind of why we exist.
Excellent. So Rupak, so are you a Dr. Rupak Doshi, or are you just Rupak Doshi?
I'm the fake doctor. Yeah, I have a Ph.D. But don't ask me to cure anyone.
So that's what I thought, because the bio says that you're a postdoctoral fellow and all the stuff. And somewhere I also saw that you did some pre-med. So your original path was to do medicine, and then you went the biotech route. What is it?
Yeah, that's right. So I was born and raised in India in the 90s, where it was very popular, right, for people to either go into the medical field, so become a doctor, or go into engineering, become an engineer, or you basically take up your family business and become a person. It's primarily three careers that most people fell into. And so naturally, that was the default career because I was good, and I loved life sciences and biology and stuff like that, and wanted to unravel life and all that stuff. And so naturally, it led me to medical, but then I never actually joined med school, because throughout the process of going through the medical entrance examinations to get into medical school, what I realized was what I was actually studying was not fun. And what I actually enjoyed was the step before that, which is how did the doctors understand that actually was the way to cure something, or that was the prescription to take, or that was the recommended dosage schedule or something like that. How did that knowledge come about? That's what I got more interested in. And so then naturally I understood that, okay, my career is most likely going to be more of a scientific career, as opposed to a medical person being patient facing. And so that's where I went into biotech, which was the field at the time in India, which was something that people kind of were starting to get into. at the time. And so I did that and very quickly gravitated towards, wet lab science, bench science, stuff like that. And then, so on and so forth. From there on, I basically did an undergrad, a master's, a PhD, postdoc, a lot of research, time spent at the bench, worked for a therapeutic company as well, which went public after a few years, which was cool to see. And then after all that is when I started OmniSync, because the problem we really wanted to solve was a lot of innovations and new ideas and stuff get stuck at the earlier stages before they even get a chance to try it out in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I slowly really got passionate about, because I saw throughout my career a lot of early stage ideas never actually make it anywhere. And not always were those bad ideas. So
yeah, so let's parse it out a little bit more, right? So early stage ideas don't go past, right? So and stillbirth for many reasons, okay? And then you said you started OmniSync, right? So but what is the problem? I mean, as you are analyzing the startups, like you said, hey, these are many factors, why early stage startups fail. And then you said, okay, because you cannot solve everything and anything for everybody. And you said, okay, this is the problem I'm going to solve. So laid out, what did you find out why early stage startups are failing? What are the top 3 or 5 reasons? And then let us know how you thought of OmniSync and which problems you wanted to address.
Yeah, absolutely. So the definition of early stage changes depending on who you talk to. And when I talk about early stage, I'm talking about grassroots stage. This is idea stage,
Okay.
right? Someone who has an idea for starting a company and doing something cool. And they're trying to get into their first few years, for like year 1 through year 3 or 4, depending on how tough the idea really is to implement, right? That's the stage that I'm talking about. You talk to a Series A or a private equity person, early stage for them is it's a company that is trying to get to 5 million in revenue.
Correct.
So it depends. So yeah, when we talk about early stage, we're typically talking about people at the grassroots stage of innovation. And typically a lot of those folks fail for a few reasons. First and foremost, from what I've seen, is people always think about funding as the reason why startups fail.
Really?
Or people think, well, the person that there was no real idea there that had any merit. But I actually feel more than both of those. Actually, the bigger reason why early stage companies fail is because the people who started the company were actually not the right people to start that company. It's more of a personality thing when it comes to founders. There is a very, very specific skill set that you need in founders for them to be successful. And I'm saying this after seeing thousands and thousands of companies and founders, right, that we've worked with, and I've seen outside of that in incubators.
But Rupak, sorry, let me stop you on that one. So, but there's a founder who came up with an idea.
Yep.
Right. So then somebody else has to pick that idea up and run with that, right? So, but now you're saying the person who came up with the idea may not be the right person to take that startup going forward. How will the person who comes will have the same passion, same vision to take the forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's 2 things to chat about here. One thing is the person who came up with the idea, a lot of time wants to be the person to start the company and run it forward.
Okay, sir. Okay,
right? That's one, and that's totally fine. The second scenario, like you said, is someone who has an idea but has no interest in starting a company. They want to find somebody else to start the company and run it forward, right? I've seen both work successfully, but the common ground that you need for anything to work in a startup ecosystem is the person has to be absolutely relentless when it comes to execution, which is getting stuff done and thinking through in very, very excruciating amounts of detail about every single aspect of that company, of that idea.
Got it.
And being unbiased about it, right? I mean, that is a skill set that gets talked about a lot. People think about it a lot, but not a lot of founders. Actually, majority of the founders don't have it, which is why majority of startups fail, right? That is the one thing that I've always seen as a differentiator. And that's why when you talk to VCs, they will tell you they invest in the people, not the idea, by and large, early stage, right? They usually invest in the because they have faith that if the person is the right person for the job to run the company, if the idea doesn't have merit, they will find that doesn't have merit and they will change it to something that has merit, right? And that's why the people who start the companies, their grit and their not necessarily passion, because passion means different things for different people, right? Some people can be
Yeah.
really passionate about of some aspect of society that they want to solve, but they may not be passionate about actually running a profitable company to solve that problem. They might be passionate about just solving that problem, which could mean that the way to solve that problem is through an NGO or a nonprofit, right? It might not always necessarily mean that the way to solve that problem is start a company and exit it, or build a technology that's profitable or something like that, right? There has to be so passion means different things for different people. And I actually put entrepreneurial grit and relentlessness in front of passion always, and that's because because passion
Something to be
has different
successful. Yeah.
meanings. Yeah.
Correct. Because there are so many ups and downs, then somebody who does not have the grit, the persevere through the things, would give up at some point.
Mhm.
So the question is, how does the OmniSync fit in? Like, where does it come in?
So OmniSync actually helps companies find and apply for money at the very early stages of their innovation
Okay.
when they don't quite know whether their idea has merit or not. So we help that stage of the company, where the company has an idea and or a individual person has an idea, and they're thinking about how to take my next step in terms of proving whether this idea has merit or not. Usually getting money to test that idea, so like build a prototype, test the idea, usually that money is the hardest to get. Like, then that's because most investors out there do not believe in that early of an idea, because there's no work that's been done on it as such, and there's no proof, and there's no merit, there's no traction, right? So investors will always tend to ask you about that, and then most founders get turned away and they lose, the desire to continue. And that's kind of where a lot of companies and a lot of early stage people will fail, especially people who don't have the grit to continue trying, right? So we help that segment of startups start. Like, that's where we start helping. So we help them find and apply for money.
Sorry. So, like, for example, when I was discussing the funding aspect of the startup, so in last episode we had angel investor. So we've learned that, so there are like multiple stages. There's the friends and family, right? Somebody initially who funds an idea with the friends and family, right? And then they'll expand that to possibly some angel investor or something like that. So are you saying that you help the companies even when there is no funding from friends and family, but you will try to help a company find some grant or some fund? But why would, if friends and family are not investing, you yourself may or may not investing, why would somebody else, put money into that company?
I think friends and family is overused as a term in funding, and the success of that is overstated by and large. And that's because a lot of companies, a lot of ideas tend to be simple ideas that are easy to understand. And a lot of them tend to be me too kind of ideas, like, hey, if this works there, then this can also work here. Sort of a thing. That's okay to go out and ask your aunt, your uncle, your whoever, right, to try and give you the first 10K, 20K, or whatever to try it out. That's okay. That might work. The problem starts when your ideas are actually deep. They involve deep technology, and you're trying to go after something that's actually different, like there's an actual key differentiator that is rooted in some sort of tech that has to be developed for that key differentiation to mean something. So we're talking about game-changing innovations or groundbreaking stuff. You can imagine, like, you go to your aunt and say, I have a great idea to cure cancer. And they'll be like, yeah, right, sure. I believe you. Like that's not going to happen, and they know that it is
Yeah.
not possible to try anything out with 10, 20K in that realm, right? You
Yeah.
need hundreds of thousands of dollars to even see if your idea has merit, right? Now, of course, you need to have the background and stuff like that to prove that the idea you have has actually some backing to it, right? Like that you know what you're talking about. But in that scenario, you can't really get friends and family to invest. And so where would those go? And so the biggest innovations, the most difference making things actually don't have the most common pathway that entrepreneurs take for the first funding. So then what do you do?
So I come to you with an idea, Rupak. So I said, hey, I have this, it's a cancer or whatever, like some idea come. So then what does OmniSync do? So just walk me through the process of how you will help me.
Yep. So there are basically, so the government actually has a program to fund that specific stage of a company,
Okay.
which is the founder has a deep scientific or technical background, or they have a partner who has a scientific technical background. They have a really cool idea to make a big difference in some aspect of science or society, but it is too expensive for friends and family or an early stage investor, or it's too risky for an early stage investor to invest to see if the idea has merit. So there is a government program that is designed specifically to fund that stage of a company. And we help the startups find and apply for that kind of money from the government. And the great thing about that money is that it comes to you with no strings attached in terms of repayment. So that it's not a loan, you don't have to repay it. And it's not an equity funding, meaning that the government is not going to take any equity, any portion of your company or nothing like that. It's completely designed to help de-risk early stage risky ideas for really difference-making innovations.
So Rupak, in that case, so one thing you mentioned is that the person or the team needs to have a scientific and technical background. That's probably one of the things that the government is looking for.
Otherwise,
See,
your
right?
idea, like how does anyone believe that you know what you're talking about, or you have the ability to try it out properly?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So then what are other factors that you have seen when you are helping these kinds of companies go through the funding process and who have been successful in getting the grants and all that stuff? What are the other things that these startup companies, early stage companies, need to have in place for them to be successful?
Well, first and foremost is the grit that I was talking to you about. Like we have very clearly seen a big difference between startups who are good at executing on things and startup who believe that somehow the idea is everything. And once they have the idea, then everything should just magically fall into place for them. The latter will never succeed in at least in our books. The former is where we have seen them do really, really well. And that's because they're able to actually go through the process and really think deeply about their idea, every aspect of it, every potential pathway in which it can fail, and have contingency plans in place so that if that happened, then they would take this approach, right? To really map it out properly in your head so that you can present it as a very button tight case to the government. Right, that's kind of where we see as the biggest difference between someone who really knows what they're talking about and they really have a good plan of how they're going to go about it if they had the money, right? So we want the companies to get to the point where money is the only reason why you're not trying something out, no other reason. Everything else and you know exactly how you're going to build it, you know exactly how you're going to test it. There's no like, oh, give me the money, I'll figure it out. That doesn't work.
So
right?
there's a
You know
complete
exactly
plan
the team
laid
you're
out.
going to get. Yep, exactly. And so that's like one of the big things. And then after that, obviously, there's some other things in the proposal package that you present to the government that kind of set your proposal apart from others. Meaning, there are things that you can show your level of preparedness. Meaning that if you've proposed a budget, you can show how you've thought through every single aspect of how you spend the money, get the partnerships, agreements, the quotes, and stuff like that from the various vendors. If you plan to purchase third-party stuff. If you're planning to do a test, then you've already spoken to the testing site, the testing field, they thought about what raw materials you need, you've already priced it out. Like just the level of preparedness to show that's a big difference maker as well. And then beyond that, who else apart from you thinks your idea has merit? So this is like where you basically
endorsers, maybe somebody,
endorsers, supporters, folks who are considered to be like, opinion leaders in the field. It could be investors. It could be future potential customers. Let's say you found who has the problem that you're looking to solve, and then you get them to give you a statement saying that, okay, this is a big problem we have. If your idea actually worked, then we would have no problems adopting it, and this will solve our problems and stuff like
Oh,
that.
I
That
see. Somebody.
creates a lot of, like, just creating a demand signal before you have the solution already,
So
right?
somebody says that, okay, if it's a healthcare product, okay, I'll use it in my healthcare system, hospital, or something like that. That would go a long
Yeah,
way.
for example, if you're creating a software system to help a clinic manage its patient flow and patient information and stuff like that, um, so you have to first present the problem, like what are they currently doing, and why is it failing, and why is this needed, and what better than getting a doctor's clinic to actually give you a statement saying that this is what we're using, it sucks, or like this is where we are and it's not working at all, or these are all the problems we have, or whatever. And if your solution actually did the job, then we would love to use it or try it or whatever.
Got it. So Rupak, my question in this case is, okay, so I can go and apply to the grant myself, like, because
Sure.
these agencies out there, and then they have laid out their procedure and said, hey, take this form and fill it in and send it, in, and then we'll look at it. So how is that different? Like, where does OmniSync come in? Like, how what is your differential? So how will you guys help? Because I have a decision to make. Do I go directly with these agencies? I do my due diligence. I find out whether 2-3 agencies I might apply. But now I have OmniSync. Okay, so should I go with OmniSync? So tell me, how does it come into
Yep,
picture?
absolutely. So, I mean, what's great is the government has put this program together, right? That is amazing. And what's also amazing is that they actually increase the budget almost every year for it, meaning that there's more and more money coming through the pipe every year. It's up to 4 billion, and that's also, like, going to increase. So it's amazing in terms of the amount of money. Just to give you context, I think I did this exercise once where there was one year, I forget, it's 2019 or 2020 or one of the years, where I did the analysis where the total amount of funding that angels and VCs gave to US startups at the seed stage was about 9 billion or something like that. This was data from PitchBook, I think, was 9 billion. And then, like, there was about 3.5 to 4 billion that came from SBIR. So it's almost like half the amount of money, right? That came from this program. But I can't tell. I'm positive that not half the number of startups have applied to it, right? And so there's basically like, far fewer startups who have applied to this program, and there's much more money there to be taken, meaning that the success rates are much higher compared to, like, fundraising through angels or VCs. But anyways, so they have this program. There's a lot of money coming in.
Actually, Rupak, again, I wanted, because we mentioned a couple of acronyms. I just want to make sure that the audience knows what they are. So
Yep.
we talked about SBIR. Just tell us what it is.
Sorry about that.
And then also the other one, I think STTR. So just lay the land out for us before we dig into a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So this program that I'm talking about that the government has set up and stuff, it's called the SBIR program. It's the Small Business Innovation Research Program. STTR is just a sister, a program that specifically deals with companies who have a tie-in with the university technology or a university person. You don't have to. So the SBIR is the more broader program, which doesn't require you to have a university partner or anything like that. And that's the program that we're talking about. So Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR. And folks who are interested can also always go to sbir.gov. Like, that's the official federal website that talks about this program and has the congressional, regulations and all that stuff in there.
Yeah. So I've gone through it, and it's very complicated. Like, it's like you get lost, right? So you're saying that you are the ones who know this stuff. You analyzed it, and you're more like a consultant. Somebody helps navigate the. Is that what it is, or you have some other secret sauce, like some software or something that helps me? So just
I can walk
go
you
to the
through
next
it.
level.
Yep. So the government put this program out. There's money in it, but it is everything that you would expect the government to do in terms of it, the way it looks, right? The program looks like everything you would expect the government programs to look like, which is, it's complicated, it's a mess, information is all over the place, it's not straightforward, they have all these rules that nobody understands. Most of them are not relevant to companies, They were designed for academic research organizations like universities. And so it's not something that is intuitive and straightforward for most people to understand. So you have two options. So think of it like taxes. You could read IRS law and file your own taxes downloading the IRS forms from irs.gov. You could do that, right? Most people don't do that because they find it too hard to do, or
Yeah.
takes too much time, which is not worth their
If
time.
it's simple, you could do it. But if it's, yeah, anything,
Yeah,
yeah,
it just that and I would probably put SBIR regulations and nuances between agencies and stuff like that as probably, depending on the complicated stuff on your taxes, is probably 3 to 4 times more confusing than taxes. And that's just going back at taxes. You can get TurboTax, and most people can get through their tax filing in one sitting, one session, right? You spend the 2 hour, whatever hour, like 2-3 hours you spend with that. So you will get through your filings and you will get it done. Most people can do that. If your taxes are standard, an SPR proposal, most people cannot get it done in one sitting like that. And that's also even you if you have help. If you don't have help, what we have seen people spend is months and months and months of their time going through YouTube videos, reading through information all over the internet, trying to figure out what needs to get done. So the government puts out all their regulations and rules for how to apply, but they don't actually teach you exactly what goes into something to create a successful proposal. Because if you think about it, the governments cannot actually present information to startups that might, like, make some startups more competitive than others and stuff like that. They have to be fair and square from their standpoint, right? Because they then have to make sure the playing field is level so that anybody out there has all exactly the same information as any other person, right, to be able to apply. So then basically it goes into, like, if you go with the CPA in tax filings, typically they have more experience to get you a better refund or save you the tax fees or stuff like that, right? Because they've done it hundreds of times before. They've got the experience. They know all the loopholes. They know all the nuances and all that. They know all the different withholdings, different breaks you can get. And so the equivalent exists in this segment where there are consulting companies out there, right, that have done this for a while, have figured out what works, what doesn't work, and what positioning, looks like for every agency that has this SBIR program to offer. Now, the reason OmniSync was started in 2019 was because when we did our customer discovery, trying to ask startups for why they aren't using consultants, why they aren't doing this more frequently and stuff like that, is because what we heard was consultants were too expensive for them to use. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg. If at that stage of the company, if you have to pay 10K, 20K to a consultant to actually help you with this, if you had the 10K or 20K, you would probably use it on your company, right? Not to pay a consultant to get forward. Most startups are like that. So for a long time, this program was only limited to rich companies who could afford it. And so most winners tended to be repeat winners, because who've done that, who've got more matured, and they've basically gotten more money, and they have gamed the system, right? So they would keep doing it over and over again. It still exists. And there are a lot of people who are trying to fight that right now. And even the government understands this, and they have implemented some regulations to try and fight what's called the SBIR mill. But by and large, in 2019, when we started this company, it was very obvious to us that in the market, there were two ways of doing this. You either hire a consultant and pay them 10K, 20K or something like that, or you do it yourself, where you're spending months and months on YouTube trying to figure stuff out by you looking at random videos. And so what we realized was that this industry had no middle path, where if you provided enough resources and support for companies, they could do majority of the work themselves if you made it easy. And that's what then we created, that middle path. We were the first ones in the market who created what we call as TurboTax for SBIRs. So the product is called Turbo SBIR.
Oh, that's why you got it, Turbo.
Yeah.
SBIR. Okay.
Correct. So that's why we called it that, because that was the analogy we drew, right? Like, if back in the 80s, when tax filing was only available for going through a CPA or you do it yourself, most tax filings were being filed wrong. So like there's a whole case study from the IRS that you can read about that basically said how that the file to free program, the free to file program that they implemented with official partnerships with Intuit, with H&R Block, and all these companies to create the software so that people can file taxes accurately. It was because most taxes were being filed wrong, and the IRS was losing a bunch of money because of that. And so then they implemented this program, and then all of a sudden they saw a stark rise in the number of taxes that were being filed accurately. Everyone was making money. They paid these companies to make the software free to people to use, most people to use for a long time. And now things have changed, obviously, because it's become more commonplace.
So
So
Rupak,
we
a
were that
question
first
came to my
software.
mind. Did you eat your this whole eat your own dog food concept, right? Which is, did you actually go through this program to get your early stage funding?
Not the early stage funding.
OmniSync.
We started the company with because we won a competition that basically funded us the first amount of money to start the company.
Okay.
But the second round, absolutely, we actually had the governments themselves who reached out to us, asking us what we were doing differently because they started seeing some of these new companies come through our system, and they were telling them that they had used our SBIR. And the government was like, hey, what is this new system in the market that people are trying to use, and what's going on here? And suddenly we're seeing new companies here. So what happened? And so we explained to them what we had done, and they were so excited. They were like, because that's when they said, hey, okay, this is awesome. How can we do this more proactively? How can we proactively look at and find those innovative companies that might be turned away by the complexity of the process?
So
Right?
same IRS TurboTax thing came,
It's
it became real here.
it became real. So later in the middle of our tenure, like in 2021, we applied for our first SBIR, which we won. And then since then, we've won several of these for different agencies that where we're trying to solve their problem of finding the companies and also helping companies get further along after they've won their first grant with them. We help them then connect with investors and stuff like that they bring into the ecosystem to help that company continue commercializing their innovations forward. So it's taken a long time for us to get here, but finally, we're here
But
where
you made the right connections, and then you're able to
I
do
think
the.
it's having a heart in the right place. Like we did it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's not that we started with this grand concept that, hey, we're going to build a system for the government. No, we didn't start like that, right? We started helping the actual customers that we had wanted to help, which is the startups. And then because we were doing that really well, the natural next step in terms of helping them was to help them connect with the innovation seekers, the governments, the investors, the entrepreneur support organizations, the tech scouts, the corporate venture people, like all of those. That was the logical next step for us to help the startups continue commercializing their innovations, right? And so then we ultimately became more of a marketplace concept for innovation, trading, if you will, because we now have a platform to help companies get in the ecosystem, and then we have a platform for the innovation seekers, right, to come in and find those companies and work with them and stuff like that. And that second platform is called Turbo Innovate, which is our next product that we launched.
Okay. So now, so where does artificial intelligence come into the picture? I know your system software itself is becoming more intelligent with what you're feeding into it. But I've seen our website that you're AI enabled and all that stuff. So I hope you are not one of those companies that, hey, let's add AI to this one and then we become an AI company. So you actually have something in your system that uses some AI. So just connect me with the AI to OmniSync.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually one of those companies that did not jump on the whole hey, ChatGPT is available and just let's add a widget to your system and you'll be AI powered or whatever. We weren't actually, we started using our AI even before ChatGPT ever came out, right? And so we were working with all those models and other kinds of models even before that. And so we have implemented AI very differently than most other companies do. We use what we term as contextual similarity matching a lot, meaning that how do you pair two sets of descriptions, right, of content together to say that they're similar. and that is like in a natural language processing that reads through that, makes interpretations based on how a human might read through and understand something, and then makes connections based on the semantic meaning of what something else is talking about. And the way we use that core capability is we understand what startups are working on, and then we can read through government requirements and solicitations, and then match them in a much better way in terms of similarity of context, as opposed to just matching the keyword AI or biotech or cancer or something like that. Like, that doesn't really get you very far, because everybody will fund the same things. Everybody says they want to solve the big problems, right? So you only get, say, if you just do keyword matching, which is keyword search, which is what most of the world uses and used to use and still uses, that doesn't get you very far. And so that contextual similarity matching algorithms that we've trained for really understanding scientific and technical language, that's what's different about what we do. And we use it like one way is using it to find the most relevant matches for a company. So when you come to us, we can basically match you to the right funding opportunity based on not just like, oh, this agency funds cancer, you do cancer, done. Not like that. It's more like, okay, how do you actually solve cancer, and which specific aspect of this agency can actually, which is the right program that's actually trying to ask for that kind of a solution, right? That's the kind of matching that we would do. And that includes all areas of science and tech, not just biotech, right? That's the first place.
Sorry, on this case, like I want to understand. I'm a startup founder,
Mhm.
so how do I, start with OmniSync? So I have to set up a meeting with you first, and so you understand my idea, and then you'll guide me what to do, or I just sign up on your marketplace and then do it myself.
Yep. So both options exist. So
Oh,
if you
both
go to
options are there. Okay,
turbosbir.com,
okay,
you can create a free account and start using some of our tools that are available for free. You can sign up for a DIY plan that's quite affordable for most people. You can start using it yourself. You can also schedule a call with us to help for you to understand how we work, how our system works, stuff like that. If you want to get more confidence in terms of whether this is the right fit for you or not, and you can get on a call with us pretty much any time throughout your pipeline, throughout your journey with us, at the very early stage before starting, after starting, to get an understanding of how best to use it. And also, if you get stuck somewhere, then you can also get on a call with us to really help you understand whether you're stuck for something that you're not understanding about the process, or maybe you just need an additional layer of help, which is again something you can get from us, right? So let's say, for example, you're stuck, you don't know how to write, you don't know how to present your case in a way that somebody else can read and understand. Then you work with someone on our team to help you prepare that proposal, right? Stuff like that. So various aspects in which
very
you can
sir.
get on a call
So
with us.
were there any cases where you told the founder and said, "Hey, I know you're trying to get this idea out, but this is not. There is no program for you. So I mean, this is not the route. You should look at some other routes, like anything like that. Or
Quite a
pretty
few.
much, you think any person,
No.
anybody who deals in science and technology has a shot at getting some fund.
So I would say definitely not everything, right? So there are lots of things that are not funded either for legal reasons. So let's say if you're working on something that's to do with marijuana or something like that, right? It's legal in some states, not legal in some states, and then the federal government has limits to what it can fund. So there's laws about what's okay and what's not okay to fund, and then there's what the agencies are generally interested in. So there are things that the agency has no interest in funding. So, like for example, something like an a ride share app there is no place in the agencies to fund something like that. Even if you're solving the problem of transport in a third world country or something like that, there is no place in any agency to fund something like that, right? Yes, if you have a very, very unique algorithm that rideshare is only one use case, but it can be used in lots of other things. And that core algorithm, the core capability has a lot of different kind of contextual things for different agencies, that's different. That can be funded still,
So
but just
basically, somehow you have to show the innovation piece, like you're innovating in some part of the chain, right? So
and has to be the use case has to be useful for science and society in some way or the other.
okay, okay,
That's
got it.
important. Like you can't just, so for example, another thing that doesn't get funded very well is fintech, right? Because a lot
Fintech.
of a lot of
Yeah.
fintechs are primarily just there to help some segment of society make money or something
Okay.
like that. That's not really something that's a goal
So
for
if I
any
come
of
up with a cool stock trading
yeah,
algorithm,
yeah,
so
there's
that
no
really
place for
makes a lot of money for myself,
that.
so it will not get funded.
Or anybody, even if you're making it for day traders or whatever. It's not something that would fly. Again, the core algorithm might be different and might be useful in other things, and that's kind of how you can fund it, but not this application of it, and so on and so forth. There's quite a few of those like that, which there's just no fit in the agency for it. Small businesses that are developing service type products that are a consulting firm, a CPA firm, lawyers, or you want to start a roofing company and stuff like that. It's just not something that this program will fund because there's no real benefit to overall science or society, right? Like those are ways that are better funded through either loans or personal, connections through rich people, friends, family.
Hey, this is great. I mean, so I think I have a really good idea of what OmniSync does, and there are different. I mean, there are other things like Turbo Innovate and Turbo Contract. We have not gotten into it. So, but so without actually exhausting all the time, I want to get into your story. Okay. So very fascinating story. So I mean, you alluded to that a little bit in the beginning. You started on some path, and then I'm looking at where you traveled. So from India, you went to Cambridge. From Cambridge, you reside in San Diego, and so I mean a lot of research paths. Scripps Institute. You did some work there, and you did some part-time work at UC Irvine as well. Basically, let me ask you this question. It was all a research path, like it's a postdoc fellow, Ph.D. and all that stuff. And suddenly, 2019, you said, "Nah, this is not for me. I'm going to start a company."
Yes.
So how does it work? How does it happen? You have, again, right? I'll put it bluntly. You have a zero business background, my friend, and suddenly 2019, I said, "I'm going to start a business." Tell me, how did that happen?
Yeah, no one was more scared than I was in 2019 getting into this without much experience or doing anything. So yeah, so I can walk you through some events that led to that.
Oh yeah,
And
please.
why.
That is what I'm interested in. Yeah.
Yeah. So back in India, so I did my undergrad in India. This was 2003, 2006, right? That period of time. After that, actually, in the second year of my undergrad, I already had an idea for an innovative product that would combine. I mean, it was something to do with cancer radiotherapy, improving radiotherapy, outcomes. And actually, in that stage, I had actually started a small company, a startup with another friend of mine.
Okay. So my assumption, hypothesis is wrong. So you've been thinking about a business from very early on.
Very early stages. So I've delved in it. I've dabbled, a bit in it. It was never the only serious first choice of my career, but it was something that I've always tried doing on the side because
Yeah.
I was one of those people for the longest time who thought that if I had the idea and I could give it to somebody else could take it up and make it big.
Oh,
For the
I see.
longest
Interesting.
time, I was one of those people. Right.
Actually, let me ask you the other question. Do you come from a business family background, or a business is something that you had to learn?
Yeah. So my dad is a small business owner.
Okay.
So I did see it when I was growing up. I had
Okay.
no
Got
interest
it.
in it because of the work he does and the way he works.
Okay.
you know. And then my mom actually had more of the science background in terms of training. So she
I
was a
see.
botanist. So
Okay.
I somehow got exposed to both
You got both of them.
growing up,
Okay.
and that probably shaped a lot of my thinking, right, in terms of
Very nice.
how to use both. But in undergrad, so that was one company we started. It was where we had a small provisional patent that we filed. We took it to some places, and the problem we had was nobody would believe it was possible. Like what the idea we had, nobody would believe it was actually doable. And so we did some small experiments. We published a small paper to show that, hey, this has merit, but I still could not get anybody to bite. And so then what I ended up doing was I was like, no one in India was believing me. I started sending it out to all kinds of other places outside India. And so one place I sent was the University of Manchester, where one of the top foremost authorities in radiotherapy was. And that person was like, this is brilliant. Come here and we'll work on it together. And so
Fantastic.
then they gave me a scholarship. And so I went and did my master's at Manchester and worked on this, took it forward even further, published another paper and stuff like that. And then at the end of that, they offered me a PhD to stay on and do more and more stuff with that.
Okay.
At the same time, I also got a
Which
PhD.
area is this? This is gene therapy? Sorry, did I miss it? What
So
was
it was, so the area of work,
Yeah, area
so
work.
it was to use a combination of gene therapy and oxygenation therapy for improving radiotherapy outcomes.
Got it. Okay.
For solid tumors and stuff. That was the goal. And then so at the time, then I got offered a PhD from Cambridge, and at the time I decided that perhaps was the better career choice for me than to start a company. And that's, again, like being an international person in the UK, you can't really start a company and you can't really do any of that stuff, right? So I was like, okay, let's focus on my education. Let's get
You're trying to
really good.
manage the risks somehow,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. And again, I was under the impression that I had shown that this was possible and somebody else could take it up and make it into a bigger company. So I had, like, basically this was funded by University of Manchester and AstraZeneca, which has a pretty strong focus in this area.
Fantastic.
And so as far as I was concerned, I did my bit in terms of doing the early stage research and showing that this is kind of how it might work. But yes, a lot more work had to be done. I just thought that was somebody else's career, not mine. And so then I moved to Cambridge, did a PhD. It was using a lot of protein biochemistry that I picked up at the time, and working on multi-drug transporters for helping in situations where cancers become
pretty early. I mean, that is now hot, right? So it's like you got started pretty early on that, and that's great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's usually how academia works. Academic research is usually like 10 to 15 years earlier than what becomes a big thing in industry over time. And so at least the success is out of that, I guess. And so in Cambridge, then when I was doing that, also I had another idea on the side for doing another startup, which I tried dabbling in, which didn't go very far. Actually, that one didn't go very far. We did get it. So that one, we did get an offer to license that idea to somebody else, which again, I left it with somebody else to take forward. And that didn't go forward either. Then I got an offer for continuing my PhD work as a postdoc fellow at Scripps Research in San Diego. And there, the concept was really cool because there actually the project was to use these multi-drug transport mechanisms that exist in cancer cells, in bacteria and stuff like that, to actually work on a system that can pump out biofuels from cells. It was for that market. And then also there was the project included working on modifying those proteins to become better and better at the job. So to do mutations and stuff like that to make them really, really proficient in doing this sort of work. And so these were quite industry-oriented projects. And so I got exposed to a lot of companies in the San Diego region trying to commercialize this technology that we were working on from the university, right? So first it was at Scripps Research, then we moved to UCSD, right, UC San Diego. So that was probably the time when most of my frustrations with technology transfer came into play, meaning that I saw for the first time how it is quite challenging for universities where they have some early stage work that they've done to actually then take it out as a company and run it commercially. I think that was it's a fairly challenging process. Back in 2015, 2016, it was probably even more challenging than it is now, right? So that was the first time when I really saw this, like, hey, there's quite a few ideas that die at the university because they can't figure out how to take it forward, right, from there. So that was the first time actually this problem started popping up in my head, that there's how many of innovations are just sitting here on the shelf rotting, right? And so then after that, I went and worked for a biotherapeutics company called Inhibrix in San Diego. Also, along this time, I had another company that there was another idea that I had while I was in the postdoc. It was not to do with my postdoc research; it was to do with something else. But I found another couple of people outside who we tried having them take the idea forward as a company as well. And actually, funny story, Norman, who's my co-founder now, he was with me in that company at the time.
I
So that
see.
was pretty cool. That was the first time we worked together somewhat, and that's
Okay.
kind of how we knew each other. And we kind of saw that we have a very, a good wavelength match in
Mindset.
terms of
Yeah. I
how
mean, this is how
we fit.
co-founders, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, get introduced
Yeah. There
and
was
yeah.
some, there was like real experience in terms of like how we think together.
Yes.
And that was a reasonably successful company at the time. It had product that got sold to Levi Stadium for the Super Bowl. It sold to military. It was a pretty successful product for where it was, for what it was. We had raised some initial angel funding for that, stuff like that. And then,
I'm hoping that you were a beneficiary of the,
oh, I
uh,
no, I was purely an idea person and an
okay.
advisor. For one reason, I legally could not. Right, I did not have the legal status to
Oh, okay.
actually.
Okay. You're standing at that.
I was full time with the university, right? So I actually could not. So I could what the only thing I could do is give them some ideas of how
But
they
it gave
might
you enough
work out.
confidence that something like this works.
Probably, yeah, exactly. Like validation, I guess. Like because, like yeah, I had the knowledge to know that it'll work out. But that was probably my third or fourth experience of handing over an idea and it didn't go anywhere,
Fantastic.
right? But I mean, it went somewhere while still
It went somewhere, but yeah, the idea, yeah,
it
exactly.
just did not scale to the level that it was. The potential was not met.
Correct.
So then finally, when Inhibrix was getting my job at Inhibrix was getting to the point where they were about to go public, I was in research. Research wasn't that like at least we did not see the pathway for me to continue doing really really well there. I kind of realized that I wanted to solve this problem that has always been bothering me, which is a lot of early ideas just fail to get out, right? And so there was this competition that was publicized. I got to know on the last day, that on the day of the deadline of the application, and then I hit up Norman. And I was like, "Hey, Norman," this was after years. After years, I hit him up the day of the deadline, and then Norman was like, "Oh yeah, looks cool. Let's try." like we tried, and we ended up, and there were multiple rounds of
You
interviews.
won the competition?
Yeah, we ultimately won it,
Okay.
and we won
How
it.
much was the prize?
It was 300K.
Oh, it's a pretty big
Yeah,
competition.
it was a big one. Yeah. And it was, I mean, entrepreneurs from all across the country had applied and tried. Um,
Amazing.
yeah, so that was the first, I guess, evidence that we might just be able to do this because the entire competition had several rounds where you had to produce
I see.
actual work products of how you would get something to market, how you would actually do how your idea would be shaped, what
So it's not like a one day you pitch and you get the money. So it's a
it was a
multi-month.
full 6 week, 2 month thing.
Okay. So you actually do a prototype, you do some kind of a, minimum viable product or all that stuff.
Yep,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay. Well, the prize money was your seed funding?
Correct. That was we call it a pre-seed. That was our first pot of money. We started the company with that money, and then the rest of it, yeah, as they say,
That's
is
great.
history. Because
Hey, as we wrap up, so last question is like, what stage is OmniSync in? Like, are you you got some grants and all that stuff? So, are you still raising money, or just can you just bring it all home? Like, where are you at,
yeah, absolutely.
and
So
where are you taking it?
yep. So we don't have any grants. Just to clarify that, everything we have is contracts with governments, which is actually like money that they've paid us for doing stuff that they are using, right? So it's products we've built for them, and utilizing some pre-existing technologies that we had, right? The core concepts that we already had from what we had already built, right, from before. So it's like modifying those, adapting those to government needs. But basically, we started the company with a pre-seed in 2019. In 2021, we raised a seed round of $1 million from investors. We had three VCs in there, three institutional VCs in there, and some family offices and stuff. We got a bunch of contracts from the government, and that is the only round we have actually raised back in 2021. And so far, it doesn't look like we have to raise any further at this point, because we're doing fairly well on the company side, where we are now very successful in revenue from the commercial side of our market, where we help startups and we help corporate ventures and stuff like that. And then we are also helping governments with these efforts that they have. So at this point, we are not raising.
Okay.
But never say never. End of
Never
the
say
year,
never,
maybe we
yeah.
have a different conversation.
Excellent. Hey, Rupak, so what a journey, man. This is phenomenal. I know it is. It almost feels like you guys are just getting started.
Yeah, but this is your like we'll be finishing 5 years in September, right? Pretty big
5 years
deal.
is nothing in the start of the world, but you've been able to overcome first 2 years, right? So that itself is great, right? So now, so 5 years is maybe on one hand you can say you're a mature startup, right? So that means you're making money.
Yep.
You don't. What I've learned is the startup, if they don't have to raise money, they should not raise money, right?
I mean, it's something that we've consistently heard from everybody. I mean, right now, if you see the world out there, it is pretty sad in terms of the number of companies that are failing out there, just because either they could not raise money because the market got really tight, VCs got really guarded, or they raised too much money in 21 and 22, and now they can't keep up with it. And so both reasons don't affect us at all, right? And so we actually grew throughout COVID. So our MVP, the first product was launched in February 2020. And then we got the news that the COVID pandemic was a real thing in March, right? 1 month after we launched. But we continued to grow throughout that period of time, even after that, and even now, right? So we're at almost 25 people now in the company. It's a pretty big deal. But also that came on the heels of a lot of work that we've all put in, and the grit that we've had. And likely, like I go back to my first point, right? If the persons running the company are not the right people for running the company, meaning that they don't put that as the most important thing on the planet for them, like failing is not an option, right? Like that is the most thing. That is the thing you do day in, day out. You sleep, eat, breathe that company. It's very challenging for the company to be successful. So that's at least our standpoint, and from what we've seen out there.
It's great. Actually, you're at a great advantage point. It's not just your journey, but you're able to see lots of startups and founders and go through the journey, and especially in the early stage rounds where lots of failures will happen. So a lot of learnings out there, for your own sake, which is actually a blessing in some ways, right?
Yeah.
So it's great. Hey,
Yeah,
Rupak,
no,
thank you
absolutely.
very much. Appreciate your time, and it's one heck of a conversation.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. Thank you so much for having me.